She collapsed on the diner floor, 5 months pregnant and starving, with nowhere left to run. Lena Carter thought she had escaped the most dangerous man she'd ever known, until the hospital called him. Now Dominic Moretti, the ruthless Mafia boss she fled from, stands in her room demanding answers about the child she's been hiding. He never knew she was pregnant. She never told him why she ran. But in his world, secrets don't stay buried, and neither do the people who keep them. This is a story of survival, power, and a love born from darkness. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far Lena and Dominic's story travels. And if you're hooked already, smash that like button. You're going to need it for what comes next. Bob. The fluorescent lights of Sal's diner buzzed overhead like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over cracked vinyl booths and grease-stained linoleum. Lena Carter moved between tables with practiced efficiency, her movements careful, controlled, the kind of deliberate grace that came from hiding something. She was hiding everything. 6 months ago, she'd been on magazine covers. 6 months ago, her face had sold perfume, luxury watches, designer dresses that cost more than most people made in a year. 6 months ago, Lena Carter had been somebody. Now she was a ghost in a stained waitress uniform, carrying coffee to truckers who never looked at her face. She preferred it that way. "Order up!" Sal's voice barked from the kitchen, rough as sandpaper. Lena grabbed the plates, meatloaf special, extra gravy, and delivered them to table 7 with a smile that never reached her eyes. The smile was muscle memory, a remnant of her old life. Cameras had loved that smile. Dominic had loved that smile. She crushed the thought before it could take root. Don't think about him. Don't think about any of it. Her hand went instinctively to her stomach, a protective gesture she'd developed over the past 5 months. The loose-fitting uniform hid most of it, but she knew. Every day, the secret grew harder to keep. Every day, she felt the weight of her choices pressing down like a physical thing. The diner door chimed. Lena didn't look up. Another trucker, another construction worker, another person passing through this forgettable stretch of highway on their way to somewhere better. She refilled coffee cups on autopilot, her mind elsewhere, calculating how many more shifts until rent was due, how much longer she could hide her condition, how much further she needed to run before she could finally stop. "Miss? Miss, you okay?" Lena blinked. An elderly woman was staring at her with concern, her coffee cup still empty. "You look pale, honey." "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. "Just tired. Long shift." But she wasn't fine. The diner tilted slightly, the fluorescent light swimming in her vision. When was the last time she'd eaten? Yesterday morning? The day before? Money was tight. The baby needed nutrients more than she needed food. That's what she told herself every time her stomach cramped with hunger. She pushed through the wave of dizziness, forced her feet to move. 4 more hours. She could make it 4 more hours. She had to. Table 3 needed ketchup. Table 5 wanted their check. Table 7 was complaining about the meatloaf. Lena handled it all with robotic efficiency, her body moving while her mind floated somewhere above, detached and distant. The cramping started during the dinner rush. At first, she ignored it. Braxton Hicks, probably. The free clinic doctor had warned her about false contractions. They'd pass. They always passed. She gripped the edge of a table, breathing through it, waiting for the tightness to release. It didn't. "Lena." Sal's voice cut through the fog. "You're white as a sheet. Go sit down." "I'm okay." That wasn't a suggestion. She made it 3 steps toward the back room before her knees buckled. The floor came up fast. She heard someone scream, maybe her, maybe someone else, and then there were hands on her shoulders, voices shouting over each other, the world spinning in dizzying circles. "Call an ambulance." "Is she breathing?" "She's pregnant. Look." "No, no, no, no. Not like this. Not here. Not with witnesses." Lena tried to speak, to tell them she was fine, that she just needed a minute, that they couldn't call an ambulance because she couldn't afford it, and hospitals asked questions and questions led to answers she couldn't give. But her mouth wouldn't form words. Her body had staged a complete mutiny, shutting down systems one by one. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was Sal's gruff voice. "Hang on, kid. Just hang on." But she woke to beeping. The steady, rhythmic sound of hospital monitors, the smell of antiseptic, the scratchy texture of thin sheets against her skin. Lena's eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the harsh overhead lights of a hospital room. Panic seized her immediately. Her hands flew to her stomach. Still there, still round. The monitor beside her bed showed a second heartbeat, strong, steady. The baby was okay. Relief crashed over her so intensely that tears sprang to her eyes. She let them fall, too exhausted to fight them. For a moment, just one moment, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her fear. "You're awake." Lena's head snapped toward the door. A doctor stood there, clipboard in hand, her expression professional but not unkind. She was younger than Lena expected, maybe early 40s, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "My baby," Lena's voice came out hoarse. "Is fine," the doctor assured her. "Heart rate is strong. But you're severely malnourished and dehydrated. When was the last time you ate a full meal?" Lena didn't answer, couldn't answer. The question exposed too much. The desperation, the poverty, the absolute rock bottom she'd hit. The doctor studied her for a long moment. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. You're at Mercy General. You collapsed at work. Do you have any family we should call? The father of the baby?" "No." The word came out sharp, desperate. "No family. No one. I'm alone. Mr. Carter. It is Carter, right? From your ID. You need to understand how serious this is. You're 5 months pregnant and your body is running on empty. If you'd waited another week, another few days even, we could be having a very different conversation right now." Lena closed her eyes. She knew. She'd known for weeks that she was pushing too hard, eating too little, running on nothing but fear and stubbornness. But what choice did she have? Stop running and let him find her? Go back to that world of violence and blood and power? Go back to Dominic? "I'll do better," she whispered. "I'll eat more. I promise. How much do I owe?" "For the ambulance, the room, We'll worry about that later." Dr. Chen's voice softened. "Right now, I need you to rest. We're going to keep you overnight for observation, get some nutrients into you via IV, make sure both you and the baby are stable. Okay?" Lena nodded, too tired to argue. Her eyes were already drifting closed again, exhaustion pulling her under like a tide. She didn't see Dr. Chen leave the room, didn't see her pull out her phone in the hallway, her expression troubled, didn't see her scroll through her contacts until she found a number she'd hoped never to use. But she'd recognized Lena the moment she'd seen her chart. Not from magazines or billboards, though she'd certainly seen those. No, she'd recognized her from a photograph. A photograph carried by a man who'd come to her office 3 months ago, desperate and dangerous in equal measure. A man who'd offered an obscene amount of money for information. A man named Dominic Moretti. Dr. Chen stared at her phone for a long moment, her thumb hovering over the call button. This was wrong. She knew it was wrong. Patient confidentiality wasn't just a guideline, it was law. She could lose her license, her career, everything she'd worked for. But she'd seen the look in Dominic Moretti's eyes when he'd shown her that photograph. She'd heard the desperation beneath the threat when he'd told her that if anyone matching this description came through her hospital, he needed to know. Immediately. And she'd seen the money, enough to pay off her medical school loans, enough to secure her daughter's college fund, enough to matter. She made the call. It rang twice before a deep voice answered. "Yes?" "Mr. Moretti," Dr. Chen said quietly. "She's here." Ba-bum. Dominic Moretti was in the middle of a meeting when his phone buzzed. The warehouse was cold, the kind of deep chill that seeped into bones and stayed there. 3 men knelt on the concrete floor, hands zip-tied behind their backs, faces bloodied. They'd been stealing from him, skimming off the top of shipments, thinking they were clever enough to hide it. They weren't. "Where was I?" Dominic asked the room at large, his voice conversational, despite the gun in his hand. "Oh, right. Loyalty. We were discussing the importance of loyalty." The man on the left was crying. The one in the middle had stopped talking an hour ago. The one on the right was still defiant, still stupid enough to think he might survive this. Dominic's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, would have ignored it, except something made him answer. Instinct, maybe, or hope, that poisonous thing he'd been trying to kill for 6 months. "Yes?" "Mr. Moretti, she's here," The world stopped. For 6 months, he'd been searching. For 6 months, every lead had gone cold. Every trace had vanished. Every moment had been consumed by the question, where did she go? Lena had disappeared like smoke. No credit card transactions, no phone records, no trail at all. She'd erased herself completely, thoroughly, as if she'd never existed, as if he'd never existed. Where? His voice came out rough. Dr. Chen gave him the address. Mercy General Hospital, 20 minutes away. She was 20 minutes away, and he'd been searching the entire goddamn country. Is she... He couldn't finish the question, couldn't voice the fear that had lived in his chest since the day he'd come home to find her gone. She's stable, Dr. Chen said, but Mr. Moretti, there's something else, something you need to know. Tell me. She's pregnant, 5 months. The gun slipped from Dominic's fingers, clattering to the concrete. The sound echoed through the warehouse like a gunshot. Every person in the room froze, shocked into silence by the sight of Dominic Moretti, a man who never showed weakness, never lost control, standing perfectly still, his expression shattered. Pregnant. 5 months. The math was simple, brutal, undeniable. His. I'm on my way, he said, and ended the call. He turned to Marco, his second in command, who stood against the wall with carefully neutral expression. Finish this. Boss, I don't care how. Just finish it. Dominic was already walking toward the door, his mind racing ahead. Pregnant. Lena was pregnant with his child, and she'd run. She'd known. She had to have known, and she'd run anyway. From him. From everything. The hurt was a living thing, sharp and vicious, but beneath it was something else. Relief so profound it felt like drowning. She was alive. After 6 months of not knowing, of imagining the worst, she was alive. And she was carrying his child. The drive to Mercy General took 12 minutes. Dominic broke every speed limit, ran every red light, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. His mind conjured images he couldn't stop. Lena hurt, Lena sick, Lena alone and terrified with no one to protect her. He'd failed her. Somehow, in some way he didn't understand yet, he'd failed her so completely that she'd chosen to run rather than stay, chosen to face pregnancy alone rather than tell him. That failure burned worse than any bullet wound. The hospital was a squat concrete building that had seen better decades. Dominic parked in a no-parking zone and didn't care. Let them tow it. Let them try. He moved through the automatic doors with singular focus, his presence parting the crowd like a knife through water. Dr. Chen was waiting by the nurses' station. She recognized him immediately. Hard not to, when a man radiated that much controlled violence. Mr. Moretti. What room? 314, but I need to warn you, she doesn't know I called you. She specifically said she had no family, no one to contact. If she finds out I violated her privacy, she won't. The promise was cold, absolute. You did the right thing, Dr. Chen, thank you. He handed her an envelope. She didn't open it, but she knew what was inside. Enough money to soothe any lingering conscience. Room 314 was at the end of a long hallway. Dominic's footsteps echoed on the linoleum, each one bringing him closer to a moment he'd been both craving and dreading for 6 months. What would he say? What could he possibly say that would explain the emptiness she'd left behind, the nights he'd spent staring at her side of the bed, the way he'd turned into something even darker in her absence? He reached the door, took a breath, pushed it open. Lena was asleep, her face turned toward the window. She looked so small in the hospital bed, so fragile. The IV in her arm fed nutrients into her body. The monitor beside her showed 2 heartbeats, hers and someone else's. His child, their child. Dominic felt something crack in his chest, some careful wall he'd built to survive her absence. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 different ways, but the reality was so much more overwhelming than any fantasy. She was here. She was real. She was... Her eyes opened. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Dominic watched awareness dawn on her face, watched shock bleed into horror, watched her entire body go rigid with fear. No, Lena whispered. No, no, no. Lena, how did you can't be... She was struggling to sit up, her hands trembling as they clutched at the sheets. You can't be here, you can't... I'm not going anywhere. His voice came out harder than he intended. 6 months of fear and anger and grief compressed into 4 words. Lena's breathing was coming faster now, her eyes darting to the door like she was calculating escape routes. Even now, even here, attached to an IV in a hospital bed, she was thinking about running. The realization was a knife between his ribs. "The doctor called you," she said, her voice hollow. "She had no right. She did what was right. You collapsed. You're malnourished. You're—" He couldn't say it, couldn't voice the accusation burning in his throat. "You're pregnant with my child and you didn't tell me." "It's none of your business." The words hit like a physical blow. "None of my business?" Dominic moved closer to the bed, his control fraying. "You disappear for 6 months without a word. No note, no explanation, nothing. I searched everywhere. I thought you were dead. I thought—" His voice broke. "And now I find out you're pregnant? 5 months pregnant? Don't." Lena's hand went protectively to her stomach. "Don't you dare! Is it mine?" Silence. The question hung in the air between them, poisonous and necessary. Dominic knew the answer. The timeline made it obvious, but he needed to hear her say it, needed her to acknowledge this one thing she couldn't deny. "Yes." The word was barely a whisper. Something violent and possessive surged through him. "Then it is absolutely my business. I don't want you here." "Too bad." Lena's eyes flashed with anger, and for the first time since he'd walked into the room, she looked like herself. Not the broken girl in the hospital bed, but the woman who'd stood beside him, challenged him, matched him. "You don't get to just show up and take over. I left for a reason, Dominic." "What reason?" He was shouting now, all pretense of control abandoned. "What possible reason could make you think running was better than staying? Better than telling me about our child?" "Because your world is violence." The words exploded out of her. "Because every day with you was wondering if it would be the last. Because I watched you kill a man in our kitchen and you didn't even blink. Because I can't raise a child in that darkness." The accusation was a gut punch. The man in the kitchen, that had been 3 days before she left. An enemy who'd broken into their home, who'd come for Dominic and found Lena instead. Dominic had killed him without hesitation, brutally, while Lena watched. He'd thought he was protecting her. He'd thought she understood. "That man would have hurt you," Dominic said quietly. "I know." Lena's voice cracked. "I know, and that's what terrifies me. That in your world, that's just another Tuesday. That violence is normal. That death is just part of the business." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." Tears were streaming down her face now. "I can't do it, Dominic. I can't be the woman who waits at home wondering if you're coming back. I can't raise a child who grows up thinking that's what love looks like, blood and guns and bodies in the kitchen." Each word was a condemnation. Each word was true. Dominic had always known what he was, what his life demanded. He'd never pretended to be anything else. But hearing it from Lena, seeing the fear in her eyes, understanding that she'd been so desperate to escape him that she'd chosen poverty and starvation over his protection, it destroyed him. "So you ran," he said flatly. "You found out you were pregnant and you ran." "I did what I had to do." "You should have told me." "Why?" Lena's laugh was bitter. "So you could lock me in a gilded cage? So you could surround me with bodyguards and make every decision about my life? I know how this works, Dominic. I know what happens to the women in your world. They become possessions, pretty things to be protected and controlled. I never treated you like a possession." "You would have." Her voice was certain. "The moment you knew about the baby, everything would have changed. You would have taken over completely, and I would have lost myself." She was right. He knew she was right. If she told him about the pregnancy, he would have done exactly what she feared, secured her, protected her, removed every threat and every freedom in equal measure. It's what men in his world did. It's what power demanded. But knowing she was right didn't make it hurt any less. And starving alone in some dive diner was better? The words came out harsh. Collapsing on the floor so malnourished the doctors are amazed you didn't lose the baby? That was the better option? Lena flinched, but her eyes remained defiant. "At least it was my choice." "Your choice nearly killed you both." "But it was mine." They stared at each other, the space between them vast and impassable. 6 months of hurt and fear and anger compressed into this moment, this standoff, This impossible situation neither of them knew how to navigate. Dominic wanted to rage, wanted to shake her, make her understand how her absence had gutted him, wanted to lock every door and window and keep her somewhere safe where she could never leave again. But he could see in her eyes that she expected exactly that. She was waiting for him to become the monster she'd convinced herself he was. So instead, he did something that surprised them both. He pulled up a chair and sat down. "Tell me," he said quietly. "Tell me about the past 6 months. Tell me where you went, how you survived, what you've been doing. Tell me everything." Lena looked stunned. "Why?" "Because I need to understand. Because for 6 months, I've been losing my mind trying to figure out what I did wrong. Because you're carrying my child and I've missed 5 months of it." His voice roughened. "Because I love you, and I need to know how we got here." The confession hung in the air. Lena's expression crumbled, some of the defiance bleeding out of her. "Dominic, just talk to me, please." So she did. She told him about the bus ticket she'd bought with cash, about the cheap motel 3 states away where she'd hidden for 2 weeks, jumping at every sound, about the positive pregnancy test that had confirmed her suspicions and changed everything, about the choices she'd made, to keep the baby, to keep running, to survive on her own terms, no matter the cost. She told him about the jobs, waitressing, cleaning houses, anything that paid cash and asked no questions, about sleeping in her car when rent was too expensive, about the free clinic where a kind nurse had given her prenatal vitamins and advice without judgment. She told him about the fear, the constant grinding fear that he would find her, that his world would swallow her whole, that her child would grow up surrounded by violence and death and casual cruelty. And she told him about the loneliness, the night she'd lain awake, her hand on her growing belly, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake, wondering if running had been courage or cowardice, wondering if maybe, somehow, there could have been another way. Dominic listened to all of it without interrupting. Each confession was a wound, but he took them all. Let them cut deep. Let himself feel the full weight of what she'd endured because of him. When she finally fell silent, exhausted from the weight of it all, he asked the question that mattered most. "Do you regret it? Running?" Lena was quiet for a long time. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "I thought I was protecting our baby, protecting myself, but looking back now, lying here..." She touched her stomach. "I don't know if I was brave or just stupid." "You were scared." "I'm still scared." Her eyes met his. "Your world hasn't changed, Dominic. You haven't changed, and I still don't know how to reconcile the man I love with the things you do." There it was, the truth they'd both been dancing around. She loved him, but she feared his world more. What if I could change? The words came out before he'd fully thought them through. Lena's laugh was hollow. "You can't. Men like you don't just walk away from the life." "I didn't say walk away, I said change." Dominic leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "What if I could make it safer? What if I could build something that didn't require blood in the kitchen?" "That's not how your world works." "Then maybe it's time to change how my world works." She was staring at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're talking about restructuring your entire operation, your entire life. Dominic, that's necessary," he finished. "If I want you, if I want our child, if I want a future that isn't you running every time things get dark." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "I lost you once. I won't make the same mistakes again." Lena's fingers curled around his, tentative but real. "I can't go back to how things were." "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help me figure out what comes next." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "I'm asking you to give me a chance to be the man you need, the father our child deserves." "I don't know if that's possible." "Neither do I," he admitted, "but I know I have to try. Because the alternative, losing you again, not knowing my child, that's not an option I can survive." Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. "You're asking me to trust you." "I'm asking you to let me earn it back." The monitor beeped steadily beside them, marking 2 heartbeats in perfect rhythm. Outside the hospital room, the world continued, violent and complicated and utterly unaware that in this moment everything was changing. Lena looked at their joined hands, then at her stomach, then back at Dominic, the man who terrified her and loved her in equal measure, the father of her child, the monster, and the man. Okay, she whispered, but if this goes wrong, if you can't change, if your world comes for us, I will run again. And next time, you won't find me. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even acceptance. But it was a chance, and Dominic would take it. You won't need to run, he promised, because I won't let anything touch you, either of you, whatever it takes. He meant it. And as Lena's eyes finally drifted closed, exhausted from everything, Dominic sat vigil beside her bed and began planning. Not revenge or retaliation, but something far more dangerous. Transformation. For the first time in his life, Dominic Moretti was going to try to be more than the sum of his sins. He was going to build something worth staying for. He just hoped he wasn't already too late. The penthouse overlooked the city like a throne overlooking a kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline in glass and steel, the lights below scattered like fallen stars. Lena stood at those windows now, her reflection ghostly in the darkened glass, and wondered how she'd ended up here again. 3 days had passed since Dominic walked back into her life. 3 days since the hospital, since the tears, since the fragile promise of change. Doctor Chen had released her with strict instructions: bed rest, proper nutrition, regular prenatal checkups, and absolutely no stress. The last one was laughable. You need to eat more than that. Dominic's voice came from behind her, quiet but firm. Lena glanced down at the plate she'd been pushing food around for the past 10 minutes. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, fresh fruit, a feast compared to the gas station sandwiches she'd been surviving on. Her stomach should have been grateful. Instead, it was twisted in knots. I'm not hungry. You're eating for two. He moved closer, and she felt the heat of him at her back. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence like a physical weight. The doctor said, I know what the doctor said. The words came out sharper than she intended. She softened her tone. I'm just adjusting. That was the understatement of the century. Adjusting to the penthouse with its marble floors and designer furniture. Adjusting to the security team stationed at every entrance. Adjusting to the way Dominic watched her like she might vanish if he blinked. Adjusting to the fact that she'd agreed to this, to him, to a future she couldn't quite visualize yet. Dominic's hand settled on her shoulder, gentle but grounding. Talk to me. Lena closed her eyes. That was the problem, wasn't it? He kept asking her to talk, to open up, to trust him with the thoughts spinning endlessly in her head. And every time she tried, the words tangled on her tongue. This is too much, she finally said. The penthouse, the security, the everything. It's overwhelming. You'd prefer the diner? I'd prefer something in between. She turned to face him, searching his expression for understanding. I know you're trying to protect us. I know that's what this is. But I feel like I'm in a cage made of expensive things. Dominic's jaw tightened. You're not a prisoner here, Lena. Then why are there guards at every door? Because the moment I brought you here, you became a target. The words were blunt, unapologetic. My enemies don't play fair. They don't care that you're pregnant. They'll use you to get to me if they can. The casual way he said it, like death threats were just part of the weather forecast, made her stomach turn. This was exactly what she'd been running from. This reality where violence was inevitable, where safety required armed guards and fortified walls. I hate this, she whispered. I know. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. But I promise you, it won't always be like this. I'm working on something, a way to make things different. Different how? Let me show you. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Come on. He led her through the penthouse to a room she hadn't entered yet, his office. The door was solid oak, the lock biometric. When it swung open, Lena stepped into a space that was pure Dominic, dark wood, leather furniture, and an entire wall of monitors showing security feeds from properties she didn't recognize. But it was the desk that caught her attention. Papers were spread across it in organized chaos, file folders stacked in careful piles. Dominic gestured to a leather chair. Sit. Lena sat, her eyes scanning the documents within reach. Business proposals, property deeds, financial statements from companies she'd never heard of. What is all this? The future. Dominic pulled up a second chair, sitting close enough that their knees touched. You said you can't raise a child in my world. You're right. So I'm building a different one. He spread out several documents, pointing to specific sections. These are legitimate businesses. Import-export, real estate development, private security consulting. All legal, all clean, all designed to transition away from the darker operations. Lena's breath caught. You're serious. Completely. His eyes met hers, and the intensity there was almost overwhelming. It won't happen overnight. I have obligations, debts, alliances that can't be broken with a snap of my fingers. But over the next year, maybe two, I can shift the focus. Make the legitimate businesses the priority instead of the front. She struggled to find words. That's a massive undertaking. The risk alone is worth it. His hand covered hers on the desk. You're worth it. Our child is worth it. Lena wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to believe that change was possible, that men like Dominic Moretti could transform into something softer, safer. But she'd lived in his world long enough to know the truth. Your enemies won't just let you walk away, she said quietly. The people you've done business with, the alliances you've built, they'll see this as weakness. They'll come for you. Let them. The words were cold steel. I've survived worse. But I haven't. The admission hurt to voice. Neither has our baby. Dominic, if this goes wrong, if someone decides to make an example out of you, they'll have to go through me first, and I don't die easy. The absolute confidence in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified her, because it meant he was willing to fight, to bleed, to kill if necessary. The violence she'd been running from wasn't going anywhere. It was just being redirected, refocused on protecting her instead of building an empire. I need air. Lena stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood. I need to think. Lena, please. She held up a hand. Just give me a minute. She walked out of the office, through the penthouse, to the balcony that overlooked the city. The night air was cool against her skin, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and life. Up here, removed from everything, it was easy to pretend the world was simple. But nothing about her world was simple anymore. The balcony door slid open behind her. Lena didn't turn around. I asked for space. I know. Dominic's voice was soft. But you're standing on a balcony 40 stories up, and I've already lost you once. Humor me. Despite everything, Lena felt her lips twitch. I'm not going to jump? Good, because I'd have to jump after you, and I look terrible in a body cast. The joke was so unexpected, so unlike the intense, brooding man she knew, that Lena actually laughed. It was a small sound, barely more than a breath, but it loosened something in her chest. There, Dominic said, moving to stand beside her at the railing. That's better. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city breathe below them. Finally, Lena spoke. I'm scared. I know. Not just of your world, of this, of us. She gestured between them. 6 months ago, I loved you so much I couldn't breathe, but I was also terrified. And when I found out I was pregnant, that terror won. And now I'm still terrified, but I'm also exhausted from running, from being alone, from pretending I don't still love you, even though I should know better. Dominic turned to face her fully. Loving me isn't stupid, Lena. Isn't it? She met his eyes. You kill people. You hurt people. You've built an empire on fear and violence. Those aren't things that just disappear because you file some business paperwork. No, he agreed. They're not. And I won't lie to you and say I'm suddenly a different man. I've done terrible things. I'll probably do more terrible things before this is over. But I'm trying to build a future where those things aren't necessary anymore, where our child doesn't have to grow up wondering if daddy's coming home. What if you can't? The question was barely a whisper. What if your past won't let you go? Then I'll fight it. His hands framed her face, forcing her to hold his gaze. I'll fight every enemy, every obligation, every piece of darkness that tries to pull me back, because you and our baby are worth more than any empire, more than any amount of power or money or control. Lena felt tears building again. She seemed to cry constantly these days. Pregnancy hormones, Dr. Chen had said, though Lena suspected it had more to do with emotional whiplash. I want to believe you. Then believe me. His forehead pressed against hers. Trust me. Not blindly. I know I haven't earned that yet, but trust that I'm trying. That I won't stop trying. She wanted to. The yearning in her chest was almost painful, but trust required more than words. It required proof, time, consistent action. It required... A phone buzzed, harsh and insistent. Dominic pulled back with a curse, checking the screen. His expression went cold. I need to take this. Now? It's Marco. He wouldn't call unless it was important. He squeezed her hand once. Stay here, I'll be right back. He disappeared inside, leaving Lena alone with the city and her thoughts. She could hear his voice through the glass, too muffled to make out words, but sharp with authority. Whatever the call was about, it wasn't good news. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Lena's unease grew with each minute. Finally, she went back inside. Dominic stood in the living room, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand clenched into a fist. I don't care what it takes. Find them. Now. He ended the call, his jaw tight with barely controlled rage. What's wrong? Lena asked. Dominic looked at her, and something in his expression made her blood run cold. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that means you're not leaving this penthouse. He crossed to her in 3 long strides. Someone knows you're here. Someone knows about the baby. The bottom dropped out of Lena's world. How? I don't know yet. But Marco just got word that the Volkov family is asking questions. Dangerous questions. He gripped her shoulders. Anton Volkov has been trying to expand into my territory for years. If he thinks he can use you as leverage, who's Anton Volkov? Someone you never want to meet. Dominic's voice was grim. He makes me look like a saint. And if he's interested in you, it's because he sees an opportunity to hurt me. Lena felt sick. This is what I was afraid of. This is exactly... I know. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. I know, and I'm sorry, but I will handle this. You have my word. How? She pulled back enough to see his face. How do you handle someone like that? By making it very clear that touching you means war. His expression was stone. And by making sure you're somewhere he can't reach. I'm not running again. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to let me protect you. His hand settled on her stomach, gentle, despite the violence radiating from every other part of him. Both of you. Lena looked up at the man she loved and feared in equal measure, and made a choice, not because she trusted his world, but because she trusted him. Okay, but I want to know everything, no secrets, no protecting me from the truth. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why. Dominic nodded slowly. Fair enough, but you won't like what you hear. I haven't liked much of anything lately. Talk. So he did. He told her about Anton Volkov, a Russian mobster who'd been encroaching on Dominic's territory for the past year. Told her about the shipments that had been hijacked, the men who'd been turned, the subtle war being waged in the shadows. Told her that bringing her to the penthouse had painted a target on her back the moment the wrong person noticed. Why didn't you warn me? Lena demanded. Why didn't you tell me this before bringing me here? Because you needed medical care. Because you were starving and dehydrated, and I wasn't going to leave you in that hospital unprotected. His voice was harsh. I made a choice, Lena. Maybe not the right one, but the only one I could live with. She wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for making decisions without her input, for dragging her deeper into his world without full disclosure. But she could see the truth in his eyes. He'd been as terrified as she was, maybe more. What happens now? She asked. Now I make some calls. Shore up security. Make it known that you're under my protection, and anyone who comes near you dies screaming. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing dinner plans. Marco's already doubling the guards. No one gets in or out of this building without clearance. So I really am a prisoner. You're alive. The words were brutal. In my world, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Lena sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. This was the nightmare she'd been running from. The violence, the danger, the absolute certainty that loving Dominic Moretti meant living with a knife at her throat. The couch dipped as he sat beside her. I'm sorry. For what? For being who you are? For building an empire that comes with enemies? She laughed bitterly. You can't apologize for your entire life. No, but I can apologize for dragging you into it. His hand found hers. You deserve better than this. Better than me. Don't! Lena turned to face him. Don't do that. Don't make yourself the villain when I chose this. I chose to come back. I chose to give us another chance. That's on me as much as you. You chose because you had no other options. I chose because I love you. The confession came out fierce. Because despite everything, the fear, the violence, the absolute insanity of your world, I still love you. And I hate that I do, but it doesn't make it less true. Dominic looked at her like she'd gutted him. Lena, I'm not finished. She needed to say this, needed him to understand. I love you, but I also need you to be honest with me. No more surprises. No more finding out about threats after they've already appeared. If we're doing this, if we're really trying to make this work, then I need to be a partner, not someone you protect and hide things from. That goes against every instinct I have. Then fight those instincts. She squeezed his hand. Because I can't live in the dark anymore. I won't. Dominic studied her for a long moment, and Lena could see the war happening behind his eyes. The man who'd built an empire on control and secrecy versus the man who wanted to give her what she needed. Finally, he nodded. Okay, no more secrets. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He stood, pulling her up with him. Because what I need to do next isn't going to be pretty. What do you need to do? Send a message? His expression went cold. Make it clear that you're off limits, permanently. Lena's stomach twisted. What kind of message? The kind that ends with bodies in the river. He said it without inflection, without remorse. Anton needs to understand that touching you means extinction, not just for him, but for everyone he loves. This was the man she'd run from. The one who spoke of death like other people spoke of weather. The one who could flip from gentle to lethal in a heartbeat. But he was also the man standing between her and people who would use her baby as leverage. The man who'd spent 6 months searching for her. The man who was trying, however imperfectly, to build something better. Will it work? She asked quietly. It'll work. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Because if it doesn't, we'll already be dead. The bluntness of it stole her breath. That's supposed to be reassuring? That's supposed to be honest. He touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. You wanted the truth. That's the truth. In my world, you respond to threats with overwhelming force. You make the cost of attacking you so high that no one's willing to pay it. And if someone's willing to pay it anyway, then I kill them. Simple, direct, terrifying. And everyone they've ever cared about. Lena closed her eyes. I don't know how to reconcile this. The man who promises to change with the man who just threatened genocide. I'm both. Dominic's voice was quiet. I'm the man who wants to give you a safe, normal life. And I'm the man who will burn the world down if that's what it takes to protect you. Those things aren't contradictory, Lena. They're the same thing from different angles. She understood what he was saying. Understood that his violence, his ruthlessness, his absolute willingness to do terrible things, all of it came from the same place as his love. That in his mind, protection and destruction were two sides of the same coin, but understanding didn't make it easier to accept. I need to lie down, she said finally. This is a lot. Of course. Dominic guided her toward the bedroom, his hand steady at the small of her back. Rest. I'll handle everything. That was the problem, wasn't it? He would handle everything, make all the decisions, take all the actions, wage all the wars, and she would be here, safe and protected and completely powerless. But as exhaustion pulled at her, Lena couldn't muster the energy to fight it. She let him tuck her into bed, let him press a kiss to her forehead, let him promise that everything would be okay. She just wished she believed him. When she woke hours later, the penthouse was dark. Lena checked the bedside clock. 2 a.m. She'd slept through dinner, through the evening, through whatever plans Dominic had set in motion. The bed beside her was empty. Lena sat up slowly, her body protesting. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and the baby was doing gymnastics against her ribs. All normal pregnancy complaints, Dr. Chen had assured her. All temporary. Everything about her life felt temporary right now. She found Dominic in his office, exactly where she expected. He sat at his desk, multiple phones lined up in front of him, his computer screen casting harsh blue light across his features. He looked exhausted, dangerous, and absolutely focused. You should be sleeping, Lena said from the doorway. Dominic's head snapped up. So should you. The baby had other ideas. She moved into the room, noting the tension in his shoulders. What are you doing? Making arrangements. He gestured to the phones, calling in favors, issuing warnings, making sure everyone knows that you're untouchable. Everyone meaning everyone who matters. Every family, every organization, every independent operator who might think they can use you. He leaned back in his chair. By morning, half the criminal underworld will know that Lena Carter is under my protection. The other half will know by noon. And Anton Volkov? Gets a special delivery. Dominic's smile was cold. One of his lieutenants made the mistake of asking questions about you to the wrong person. Marco's handling the response. Lena didn't ask what that response entailed. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. Will this end it? It'll make him think twice. Dominic stood, crossing to her. Anton's ambitious, but he's not stupid. He knows I have resources he doesn't, alliances he can't match. And now he knows I have something worth protecting, which makes me more dangerous, not less. How does that work? Because a man with nothing to lose is unpredictable, but a man protecting something he loves. Dominic's hand settled on her stomach. That man is absolutely ruthless. He'll do anything, sacrifice anyone, cross any line to keep his family safe. The baby kicked against his palm, a tiny flutter of movement. Dominic's expression transformed, the coldness melting into something softer, almost vulnerable. Did you feel that? Lena asked. Yeah. His voice was rough. That's our baby. Our daughter, probably. Lena covered his hand with hers. Dr. Chen said at the next ultrasound, we might be able to tell. A daughter. Dominic looked stunned, like the reality was just now hitting him. I'm going to have a daughter. We're going to have a daughter, Lena corrected, assuming I don't lose my mind from stress first. You won't. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. I won't let you. I won't let anything hurt you, either of you. Lena rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Strong, steady, alive. I'm still scared. Good. Fear keeps you alive. He kissed the top of her head. But you're not alone in it anymore. Whatever comes next, we face it together. It was a promise. Maybe an impossible one. Maybe one he couldn't keep, but a promise nonetheless. And standing there in the dark, with Dominic's arms around her and their baby moving between them, Lena chose to believe it. Just for tonight, she chose hope over fear. Tomorrow could bring new threats, new dangers, new reasons to run. But tonight, she was exactly where she needed to be. Even if that place was in the eye of a storm. The storm broke 6 days later. Lena had just finished breakfast when the first gunshot shattered the morning calm. The sound was distinct, unmistakable, a sharp crack that seemed to split the air itself. Her coffee cup slipped from her fingers, ceramic exploding against marble in a spray of liquid and fragments. Dominic was moving before the second shot rang out. He crossed the penthouse in 3 strides, his hand already reaching for the gun holstered beneath his jacket. Get to the safe room, now. What's happening? Now, Lena. The command cut through her paralysis. More gunfire erupted, closer this time, accompanied by shouts and the sound of something heavy slamming against the front door. Lena ran. The safe room was hidden behind a false panel in Dominic's office, reinforced steel disguised as ordinary wall. Her hand shook as she pressed the biometric scanner, as the panel slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside was a small space lined with monitors, weapons, and enough supplies to last a week. She'd hoped never to see it. Lock it behind me, Dominic ordered, already turning back toward the chaos. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marco. You understand? Dominic! Fear clawed at her throat. Don't go out there, please. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression broke her heart. I have to. They're here for you, which means they have to go through me first. He kissed her hard, fast, desperate. I love you, remember that. Then he was gone, the panel sliding shut with brutal finality. Lena heard the locks engage, magnetic bolts slamming into place. She was sealed in, protected, completely helpless. The monitors flickered to life, showing security feeds from throughout the penthouse. Lena watched in horror as armed men poured through the shattered front door. They moved with military precision, weapons raised, covering each other's advance. Not random thugs. Professionals. Dominic met them in the living room. What followed was brutal and efficient. Dominic moved like violence personified, each shot precise, each movement calculated. Two men dropped before they even saw him. A third made it 3 steps before Dominic put a bullet through his throat. But there were too many. Lena counted 8 men, maybe more flooding in from the service entrance. Even as Dominic dropped them, more appeared. She saw Marco burst from the hallway, weapon blazing, taking down 2 attackers who'd tried to flank Dominic. The room became a war zone, furniture splintering under gunfire, windows shattering in crystalline rain. "Behind you!" Lena screamed at the monitor, knowing Dominic couldn't hear her. An attacker had circled around, weapon trained on Dominic's back. She watched in breathless terror as Marco tackled the man, both of them crashing into a wall hard enough to crack plaster. The fight devolved into chaos. Hand-to-hand combat mixed with gunfire, men grappling and bleeding across expensive carpet. Lena pressed her hands against the monitor, showing Dominic, watching him take a hit to the ribs that would have dropped a normal man. He barely flinched, pivoting to drive his elbow into his attacker's face with bone-breaking force. Then she saw him. A man in the back, directing the others with hand signals. Older, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Lena had made in a year of waitressing. He stood calm amid the violence, observing rather than participating. Anton Volkov. Had to be. He was saying something to the man beside him, gesturing toward the office, toward the safe room, toward her. Lena's blood turned to ice. They knew. Somehow they knew exactly where she was. On the monitor, Dominic was surrounded. 4 men rushed him at once, overwhelming him through sheer numbers. Lena watched him go down, watched them pin him, watched one of them raise a gun to his head. Marco came out of nowhere, a whirlwind of violence. He shot the man with the gun, kicked another in the knee hard enough that Lena heard the joint snap even through the monitor. It bought Dominic seconds, just enough to break free, to grab a weapon, to even the odds. But Anton was moving toward the office. Lena backed away from the monitors, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break her ribs. The safe room was supposed to be impregnable. Reinforced steel, biometric locks, designed to withstand anything. But if they had blueprints, if they knew the codes... The baby kicked, a sharp reminder of exactly what was at stake. Lena's hand went to her stomach, protective and terrified. "Not now," she whispered. "Please, not now." Something slammed against the office door. Once, twice, 3 times. Wood splintered. The monitors showed 2 men working on the lock while Anton watched, utterly composed. Like this was just another business transaction. Lena looked around the safe room desperately. There had to be something, some way out, some weapon she could use. Her eyes landed on a panel marked Emergency Exit, a tunnel that led to the building's basement. Dominic had shown it to her during the tour, insisted she memorize the route. She'd thought he was being paranoid. The office door gave way with a crash. Through the monitors, Lena saw Anton enter, his men flanking him. He studied the room with calculating eyes, taking in the desk, the files, the obvious signs of hurried work. Then he looked directly at the camera, directly at her. "Mrs. Moretti," he said, his accent thick but clear. "Or should I say Miss Carter? I'm disappointed we're meeting like this. I had hoped for more civilized circumstances." Lena's hands shook as she grabbed the emergency pack Dominic had stocked. Water, protein bars, a burner phone, and a handgun she barely knew how to use. She couldn't stay here. Couldn't wait to become a hostage. "Your lover is quite impressive," Anton continued, still speaking to the camera. "But he's outnumbered and outgunned. In approximately 3 minutes, my men will subdue him completely, and then we'll have a conversation about the future of his territories." He moved closer to the hidden panel, his hand trailing along the wall. "I know you're in there. I know about the baby. Such a precious thing, an unborn child. So vulnerable. So many things could go wrong during a pregnancy." The threat was clear, crystal clear. Lena's decision crystallized. She couldn't let them take her. Couldn't let them use her baby as leverage against Dominic. She hit the emergency exit release, watched the back wall of the safe room slide open to reveal a narrow tunnel descending into darkness. "I'm giving you one chance," Anton said. "Come out peacefully. No one else needs to die today. You have my word that you and the child won't be harmed." The word of a mobster. The word of a man who'd just attacked her home, who'd brought a small army to kidnap a pregnant woman. That word was worthless. Lena stepped into the tunnel. The panel slid shut behind her, plunging her into near-total darkness, broken only by emergency lighting strips along the floor. The air was cool and stale, the walls close enough to touch on both sides. Lena moved as quickly as her pregnant body would allow, one hand on the wall for balance, the other clutching the emergency pack. Behind her, muffled by steel and concrete, she heard the sound of explosives. They were breaching the safe room. She had minutes at most. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever, a claustrophobic nightmare of shadows and echoing footsteps. Lena's breath came in ragged gasps, her back screaming in protest, but she pushed forward. Had to keep moving. Had to get somewhere safe. The tunnel ended at a metal ladder leading up to a hatch. Lena climbed awkwardly, the pack banging against her hip, her swollen belly making every movement a struggle. The hatch opened into the building's basement parking garage, dim and empty except for a few scattered vehicles. Lena emerged into fluorescent-lit concrete, looking around frantically for an exit. The garage had 3 levels, each one a maze of support columns and parked cars. She needed to get to street level, needed to disappear into the city before Anton's men realized she'd escaped. The burner phone in the pack only had 3 numbers programmed. Dominic's personal line, Marco's backup, and a third number labeled simply emergency. Lena hit the third option as she half ran, half stumbled toward the exit ramp. It rang once before a woman's voice answered. Safe house protocol? Authentication? Lena's mind blanked. Dominic had made her memorize a code phrase, had drilled her on it repeatedly. What was it? What was... Nightingale? She gasped. The code is Nightingale. Confirmed. Location? Building basement. I don't know how many, but they're coming. Vehicle is en route. Black SUV, license plate Echo 77 Tango Mike. Driver will say, Morning Glory. You respond, Evening Star. Do not get in any other vehicle. Understood? Understood. Lena kept moving, her eyes scanning for threats. The parking garage felt like a trap, every shadow a potential enemy. Stay on the line, the woman instructed. I'm tracking your phone. Help is 2 minutes out. 2 minutes felt like an eternity. Lena made it to the exit ramp, staying close to the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her whole body ached, muscles protesting the exertion. The baby was kicking frantically, responding to her mother's fear. I'm sorry, Lena whispered, her free hand on her stomach. I'm so sorry. We're going to be okay. We have to be okay. The sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere above. Multiple sets, moving fast. They'd discovered her escape route. They're coming, Lena told the woman on the phone. 30 seconds. Can you make it to street level? Lena looked up the ramp. 20 feet, maybe 30. Steep incline, no cover. If they caught her there, she ran. Every step was agony. Her back seized, her legs trembled, but she forced herself forward. Almost there. Almost. A black SUV screeched around the corner at the top of the ramp, heading straight for her. Lena froze, trapped between the vehicle and the men surely closing in from behind. The SUV stopped 5 feet away. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. Morning Glory, Evening Star. Lena practically fell into the back seat. The driver hit the gas before Lena even got the door closed, the SUV accelerating up the ramp and into daylight. Lena looked back through the rear window. 3 men burst onto the ramp, weapons drawn. One of them raised a gun, tracking the SUV. The driver took a corner hard enough to throw Lena against the door. More turns followed, each one calculated to break line of sight, to lose any potential followers. After 5 minutes of evasive driving, the woman finally spoke. I'm Sarah. I work for Mr. Moretti. You're safe now. Is he... Lena couldn't finish the question. The penthouse, they attacked. I don't know if... He's alive. Sarah's eyes met Lena's in the rear-view mirror. Mr. Volkov's men are in retreat. The boss is injured but stable. Injured how badly? Stable, Sarah repeated, which wasn't an answer at all. We're taking you to a secure location. Doctor's already waiting to check you and the baby. Lena slumped in the seat, adrenaline draining away and leaving her shaking. She'd escaped. They were safe. But Dominic was injured. The penthouse was compromised. And Anton Volkov now knew exactly how much she meant to Dominic. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The safe house was a converted warehouse in an industrial district that had seen better days. Sarah drove into a loading dock and the bay door closed behind them immediately, sealing them in. Armed guards appeared from the shadows, surrounding the SUV with professional efficiency. "Can you walk?" Sarah asked, opening Lena's door. "I think so." Lena's legs wobbled when she stood, but she managed to stay upright. Sarah took her arm anyway, providing steady support as they moved through the warehouse to a freight elevator. The space had been transformed into a functional living area, sleeping quarters, a kitchen, medical facilities, communication equipment. Everything needed for an extended stay. Everything that screamed, "This is where you hide when your world collapses." Dr. Chen was waiting in what looked like a makeshift examination room. "Miss Carter, I'm glad you're safe." "You're in on this too?" Lena shouldn't have been surprised. Of course, Dominic had backup plans. Of course, he'd prepared for worst-case scenarios. "Mr. Moretti is thorough." Dr. Chen gestured to an exam table. "Let's make sure the baby's okay." The examination felt surreal. Dr. Chen's hands on her stomach, the cold gel, the Doppler picking up the rapid flutter of a tiny heartbeat. Everything was okay. Despite the gunfight, the escape, the absolute terror, the baby was fine. Lena burst into tears. "Hey, it's okay." Dr. Chen's voice was gentle. "You're both healthy, strong. Whatever stress you went through, the baby weathered it." "I almost got us killed." The words came out broken. You survived. That's what matters." Dr. Chen squeezed her hand. "You did exactly what Mr. Moretti trained you to do. You escaped, you called for help, you kept yourself and your baby safe. That takes incredible courage." Courage. Lena had never felt less courageous in her life. She felt like a liability, a weakness that had nearly gotten Dominic killed. The door burst open. Lena's head snapped up, her body going rigid with fear. Dominic stood in the doorway, blood spattered and radiating barely controlled violence. His shirt was torn, revealing bruises already forming across his ribs. A cut above his eyebrow dripped blood down the side of his face. But he was alive. He was here. "Out," he told Dr. Chen. Not a request, an order. Dr. Chen left without argument, pulling the door closed behind her. The moment they were alone, Dominic crossed to Lena and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was almost desperate, his hand shaking as they cradled her head. "You're okay," he said against her hair. "Thank Christ you're okay." "So are you." Lena pulled back enough to touch his face, her fingers gentle on the cut. "You're hurt." "Doesn't matter." His eyes roamed over her, cataloging every detail. "The baby." "Fine, we're both fine," her voice cracked. "Dominic, they knew. They knew exactly where the safe room was. They knew about the baby. They knew everything." "I know." His jaw clenched. "Someone talked. Someone on my side gave Anton the information he needed." "A traitor?" "Has to be." The words were bitter. "I've already got Marco running down every person who had access to the penthouse plans, every guard who knew about your location. When I find out who—" He didn't finish, didn't need to. The promise of violence was clear. "What happens now?" Lena asked. "Now you stay here. The warehouse is off the books, paid for through shell companies Anton can't trace. Limited staff, all people I'd trust with my life. You'll be safe while I clean up this mess." "You mean while you go to war?" Dominic's silence was answer enough. Lena pulled away from him, needing distance to think. This is exactly what I was afraid of. This cycle of violence. Attack, counterattack, escalation. Where does it end? It ends when Anton Volkov is no longer a threat. And then what? Someone else comes along, sees an opportunity, starts the whole thing over again? She turned to face him. "I can't live like this, Dominic. I can't raise a child wondering when the next attack will come." "You won't have to." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. "Because after this, I'm done. No more half measures, no more gradual transitions. I'm burning it all down." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm getting out, completely. I'll liquidate the illegal operations, sell them off to people who can handle the heat. Keep only the legitimate businesses, start over clean." His hands framed her face. "But first I need to make sure no one ever threatens you again. That means dealing with Anton permanently." "Dealing with him how?" "However necessary. No hesitation, no remorse. He came into my home. He threatened you, threatened our child. That doesn't get forgiven. It gets answered." Lena looked into the eyes of the man she loved and saw the truth. This version of Dominic, the one willing to kill to protect, wasn't going away. It was fundamental to who he was. The question wasn't whether he'd choose violence. It was whether she could accept that he would. "I need you to promise me something," she said quietly. "Anything. When this is over, when Anton is dealt with and we're safe, I need you to keep your word. About getting out. About building something different. Because I can accept that you'll do terrible things to protect us. But I can't accept that as our permanent reality." Dominic studied her face, and Lena could see him weighing her words. Finally, he nodded. "You have my word. This is the last war. After this, we're done." "Okay." Lena let out a shaky breath. "Okay, then do what you have to do." "Just like that?" "No. Not just like that. I hate it. I hate that this is necessary. I hate your world. I hate that loving you means accepting violence as the cost of safety." She touched his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palm. "But I love you more than I hate all of that. So yes, do what you have to do to keep us safe." Dominic kissed her then, hard and fierce and full of promises he might not be able to keep. When he pulled away, his expression had shifted into something cold and focused. "Stay here. Follow Sarah's instructions. If something happens to me, don't." Lena pressed her fingers to his lips. "Don't say it. Just come back." "I will." He kissed her once more, softer this time. "I promise." Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with her fear and the distant sound of preparations for war. The next 72 hours were the longest of Lena's life. She stayed in the warehouse, watched over by Sarah and a rotating guard of stern-faced men who spoke in terse sentences and checked weapons with practiced efficiency. News filtered in sporadically, reports of violence across the city, territories changing hands, bodies being found in places designed to send messages. Dominic was dismantling Anton's organization piece by piece. "He hit 3 of Volkov's warehouses last night," Sarah reported on day 2, her tone neutral. "Cleared them out completely. No survivors." Lena tried not to think about what no survivors meant, tried not to calculate the body count. The lives ended because she existed. "Anton's holed up in his estate now," Sarah continued. "Fortified position? Maybe 24 men? Smart move. Makes him harder to reach." "But not impossible," Lena said. Sarah's slight smile was answer enough. "Doctor." Chen visited daily, checking Lena's blood pressure, monitoring the baby, prescribing rest that was impossible to achieve. "Your stress levels are concerning," she said on the 3rd day. "I understand the circumstances, but you need to find ways to calm down. For the baby's sake." Lena wanted to laugh. Calm down while the father of her child waged war across the city? Sure, no problem. That night, Marco arrived at the warehouse, his expression grim. "We found the traitor." Lena set down the book she'd been pretending to read. "Who?" "One of the senior guards. Anton offered him $500,000 and a new identity. He gave up the penthouse schematics, your location, security protocols, everything." Marco's voice was flat. "The boss dealt with him personally." Lena didn't ask how. "Is it over now?" "Has Dominic?" "He's moving on Anton tonight. Final push. By morning, this will be finished one way or another." Marco met her eyes. "He wanted you to know, in case he doesn't come back." The words hung unspoken between them. Lena's hand went to her stomach, to the life growing there who might never know their father. "He will," she said, with more confidence than she felt. "He promised." "Yeah." Marco headed for the door. The boss is good at keeping his promises. After he left, Lena couldn't sit still. She paced the warehouse, ignoring Sarah's concerned looks, her mind running through every terrible possibility. What if Anton had more men than expected? What if Dominic walked into a trap? What if the last time she saw him was him walking out that door, promising to come back? The hours crawled past. Midnight came and went. 1 in the morning. 2. Lena refused to sleep, refused to miss the moment when news arrived. Good or bad, she needed to know. At 3:17, the warehouse's bay door opened. Lena was on her feet instantly, her heart in her throat. A black SUV pulled in, identical to the one that had rescued her. The back door opened. Dominic stepped out. He was covered in blood, his clothes soaked with it, his face spattered, his hands stained dark red. But he was walking. He was alive. He was here. Lena ran to him, not caring about the blood, not caring about anything except the fact that he'd come back. Dominic caught her, his arms wrapping around her despite the gore coating his skin. "It's done," he said quietly. "It's over, Anton." "Dead. His entire organization is scattered. The ones who survived are running as far and fast as they can." Dominic pulled back to look at her. "You're safe now. Truly safe. No one's coming for you." Lena searched his face, looking for signs of injury, of pain. "Are you hurt?" "None of this is mine." He gestured to the blood. "I'm fine. We're fine." The we encompassed so much. Him and Lena, him and the baby, the future they were building from the ashes of his old life. Lena felt tears building, relief and horror mixing into something overwhelming. "I need to clean up," Dominic said. "Then we need to talk about what comes next." What came next was a new life, a different life, one built on the graves of their enemies, but a life nonetheless. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Lena let herself believe it might actually be possible. The shower ran for 20 minutes before Dominic finally emerged, his skin scrubbed raw, the blood washed away, but not the weight of what he'd done. Lena waited in the small bedroom Sarah had set up for them, sitting on the edge of a bed that felt nothing like the king-sized mattress in the penthouse. Everything here was temporary, makeshift, a holding pattern until they figured out what came next. Dominic stood in the doorway, wearing clean clothes that someone had left for him, his hair still damp. He looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. This was the kind of exhaustion that settled into bones, into souls. "Come here," Lena said softly. He crossed to her without hesitation, sinking onto the bed beside her. She took his hand, examining the raw knuckles, the bruises forming across his wrists. Evidence of violence, even if the blood was gone. "Tell me," she said. "You don't want to know." "I need to know." Lena's voice was firm. "No more secrets, remember? You promised me honesty." Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. Finally, he spoke. "We hit the estate at midnight. 23 men inside, all armed, all loyal to Anton. It was a fortress, reinforced walls, security systems, sight lines designed to make approach nearly impossible." "How did you get in?" "Marco found a weakness, a drainage tunnel that connected to the property. We sent a small team through while the main force provided distraction at the front gate." His voice was flat, reciting facts without emotion. By the time Anton realized what was happening, we were already inside. Lena could picture it too clearly. The chaos, the gunfire, men fighting and dying in expensive hallways. And Anton? Tried to run, made it to his panic room, thought the reinforced door would save him. Dominic's jaw clenched. It didn't. We had explosives, cutting torches, time. Eventually, he had a choice, come out or suffocate when we cut off his air supply. He came out. He came out. Dominic met her eyes, and Lena saw something dark and final in his expression. "I gave him a chance to beg, to explain why he thought threatening you was acceptable, to justify bringing war to my doorstep. What did he say? That it was just business, that you were leverage, nothing personal, that in our world, family is always fair game." Dominic's voice went cold. "So I made it personal. I made sure his last moments were spent understanding exactly what it cost to threaten mine." Lena's stomach twisted, but she didn't look away, didn't let herself flinch from the reality of what loving Dominic Moretti meant. "How many died tonight?" "All of them. No hesitation. I couldn't leave anyone alive who might seek revenge later. Couldn't risk someone coming back in 6 months, a year, with a grudge and a gun. 23 men, plus Anton. 24 lives ended to protect her and the baby. The math was brutal, inescapable." "I'm sorry," Dominic said quietly. "I know this isn't the life you wanted. I know you hoped I could change without more bloodshed, but Anton forced my hand." "I know." Lena squeezed his hand. "I'm not angry. I'm just processing, trying to reconcile the man sitting next to me with the one who just killed 24 people." "They're the same man, Lena. They've always been the same man." "I know that too." She shifted to face him fully. "And that's what terrifies me. Not that you're capable of violence, but that you can separate from it so completely, that you can wash off the blood and sit here like it's just another day." Would you prefer I fell apart? There was an edge to his voice. Would it be better if I couldn't handle what needs to be done? No. Lena touched his face. I just need to know that it affects you. That killing isn't so easy you've lost part of yourself. Dominic's expression cracked, some of the careful control slipping. It's never easy. Every life I take, every choice I make that ends in death, it costs me. Maybe not in ways you can see, but I feel it, the weight of it. Then why do it? Because the alternative is losing you. Simple, direct, devastating. I'd rather carry the weight of 1,000 deaths than live with the knowledge I could have protected you and chose not to. Lena understood then, really understood. This was love in its most brutal form, not flowers and poetry, but blood and choices and the willingness to damn yourself to keep someone else safe. It wasn't the love she dreamed of as a girl, but it was the love she had. Okay, she said finally, then let's talk about what comes next. You said this was the last war. You said you were getting out. I meant it. Dominic's voice steadied. I've already started the process. Marco's handling the transitions, selling off territories to neutral parties, liquidating assets, closing down operations that can't be legitimized. It'll take time, maybe 6 months, but by the time our baby is born, I'll be out. And the people who've worked for you, the ones who depend on your organization, will be taken care of. He'd clearly thought this through. Anyone who wants out gets a severance package and references for legitimate work. Anyone who wants to stay in the life gets transferred to the buyers with their positions intact. No one gets abandoned. It was more than Lena had expected. The Dominic she'd known 6 months ago wouldn't have cared about the collateral damage of his exit. But this version, the one sitting beside her, planning a future instead of a conquest, was different. What about the legitimate businesses? She asked. They're solid. The real estate holdings alone are worth tens of millions. Add in the import-export company, the security consulting firm, the investments, we'll be more than comfortable. Wealthy, even, by normal standards. He smiled slightly. You'll never have to work in a diner again. I didn't mind the diner. The lie was automatic. She'd hated every minute of it. The grease, the exhaustion, the customers who looked through her like she was furniture. But it had been hers, her choice, her life independent of Dominic's shadow. Liar. His smile widened. But I appreciate the sentiment. Lena laughed despite everything, the sound surprising them both. It felt strange to laugh after a night of death, after weeks of fear. But maybe that was the point. Maybe laughter was how you survived the darkness. Where will we live? She asked. The penthouse is compromised. I'm buying a house, something outside the city, with land around it. Space for the baby to grow up without being surrounded by concrete and danger. Dominic pulled out his phone, showing her photos of a sprawling estate with gardens and a view of rolling hills. It's remote enough for privacy, but close enough to the city for business. What do you think? Lena studied the images, trying to picture herself there. Picture a nursery, a life, mornings without looking over her shoulder. It's beautiful. It's safe. The distinction mattered to him. High walls, advanced security, but discreet. It won't feel like a fortress. When can we move in? 2 weeks. I'm having renovations done, security upgrades, a nursery, whatever you want. He pocketed the phone. We can go look at it tomorrow if you're feeling up to it. Tomorrow felt impossibly far away and terrifyingly close. Tomorrow meant starting to build the life they'd been promising each other. Tomorrow meant trusting that the danger had really passed. I'm scared, Lena admitted, that this isn't really over, that someone else will come along, see an opportunity, start the whole cycle again. They won't. The certainty in Dominic's voice was absolute. What happened to Anton sends a message to everyone in this world. You don't touch what's mine, ever. The cost is too high. But you're getting out. Won't that make you look weak? I'm not getting out because I'm scared or beaten. I'm getting out because I'm choosing something else. There's a difference. He stood, pulling her up with him. People respect strength. I just demonstrated mine in the most brutal way possible. Now I'm demonstrating control by walking away on my terms. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the future he was painting was actually achievable. But her past 6 months had been defined by running and hiding. Trust didn't come easy anymore. I need you to promise me something else, she said. What? If it doesn't work, if getting out proves impossible, if the violence doesn't stop, I need you to let me go. Let me and the baby disappear somewhere you can't find us. The request hit Dominic like a physical blow. You're asking me to give you up. I'm asking you to put our child's safety above your need to protect us yourself. Lena's voice shook but held steady. If your world won't let you go, I need to know you'll make the hard choice. That's not a choice I can make. It might be the only choice that matters. She touched his chest. I love you, but I love our baby more. And if protecting her means running from you again, I will. I need to know you won't hunt me this time. Dominic looked like she'd gutted him. His hands came up to frame her face, his expression raw. Don't ask me to promise that. Ask me anything else. I can't. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. Because that's the promise that tells me you really have changed. That you can put us before your pride, your need for control, your entire identity as someone who never lets go. They stood there, locked in a standoff that felt more significant than any of the violence that had come before. This was the real test. Not whether Dominic could kill to protect her, but whether he could let her go if that's what safety required. If it comes to that, he finally said, his voice rough, if I can't make this work, if danger keeps following us, I'll let you go. I'll hate every second of it, and part of me will die. But I'll let you go. Thank you. Lena kissed him softly. That's all I needed to hear. But it won't come to that, Dominic added, because I'm going to make this work, whatever it takes. The conviction in his voice was almost enough to banish her doubts. Almost. They spent the night in the warehouse, neither of them sleeping much. Lena dozed fitfully, her dreams filled with gunfire and blood. Every time she jerked awake, Dominic was there, watching over her with the vigilance of someone who'd learned that safety was never guaranteed. Morning came gray and cold. Sarah brought breakfast, eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and news that the house was ready for viewing if they wanted to go. Is it safe? Lena asked. Completely, Sarah assured her. We've swept the entire property 3 times. No surveillance, no threats, no sign of any hostile interest. It's as secure as we can make it. The drive took 40 minutes, winding through increasingly rural roads until they reached a private gate. The house sat at the end of a long driveway, surrounded by acres of carefully maintained grounds. It was beautiful in an understated way. Stone and wood, large windows, architecture that spoke of wealth without screaming it. What do you think? Dominic asked as they pulled up to the front entrance. It's perfect. Lena meant it. The house felt like a sanctuary, removed from the chaos of the city, peaceful in a way she hadn't experienced in months. Inside was even better. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, rooms filled with natural light. The master bedroom had a view of the gardens. The kitchen was modern but warm, and upstairs, overlooking the back lawn, was a nursery. Someone had already started decorating. A crib stood in one corner, white and delicate. The walls were painted a soft yellow, neutral and cheerful. A rocking chair sat by the window, positioned to catch the afternoon sun. Lena stood in the doorway, her hand on her stomach, and let herself imagine it. Holding her baby in that chair, rocking them to sleep with sunlight streaming through the windows. Building a life in this space that had nothing to do with violence or fear. We can change anything you don't like, Dominic said from behind her. Colors, furniture, layout, whatever you want. It's beautiful. Her voice caught. It's exactly what I would have chosen. Good. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands settling over hers on her stomach. This is our future, Lena. This house, this baby, this life. Everything else is just noise we're leaving behind. Lena leaned back against him, letting herself believe it. Just for a moment, she let herself believe that happy endings were possible even for people like them. The moment shattered when Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. Boss, we have a problem. Dominic's entire body tensed. What kind of problem? The kind where Anton had a fail-safe we didn't know about. He recorded everything. Meetings, deals, confessions, hours of footage documenting illegal operations across the city, including ours. Marco's voice was grim, and he set it to release to the FBI if he died. The bottom dropped out of Lena's world. When? Timer was set for 72 hours after his last check-in. He died 3 days ago. Marco checked his watch. Which means we have approximately 2 hours before every federal agency in the country has enough evidence to put the boss away for life. Can you stop it? Dominic asked, already moving toward the door. Maybe. Anton's tech guy is in the wind, but we found his backup server location. If we can get there before the deadline, we might be able to shut it down. Marco fell into step beside them. But it's going to be close. They raced back to the city, Sarah driving with controlled aggression while Dominic coordinated over the phone. Lena sat in the back, her mind spinning through scenarios, each one worse than the last. If those recordings went public, Dominic would be arrested within hours, tried, convicted, imprisoned. Their baby would be born with a father behind bars. "Where's the server?" Dominic demanded. "Office building downtown," Marco replied through the speaker. 15th floor, secured with Anton's personal biometrics. We're bringing his body. We'll use his fingerprints and retinal scan to get in. The casual mention of using a corpse's body parts to bypass security should have shocked Lena. Instead, she just felt numb. This was the world she'd signed up for. This was the reality beneath every promise of change. They reached the building with 90 minutes to spare. It was a nondescript office tower, the kind that housed accountants and insurance agencies, completely unremarkable, perfect cover for criminal activity. "You're staying in the car," Dominic told Lena. "Like hell I am." "Lena, you said no more secrets. You said we face things together." She met his eyes. "I'm coming with you." "It's not safe." "Nowhere is safe." The words exploded out of her. "Do you understand that? Nowhere I go, nothing I do, no amount of hiding will ever make me completely safe. So stop trying to protect me from reality and let me be part of this." Dominic looked like he wanted to argue, but Sarah cut in. "She's right, boss. And frankly, we might need an extra pair of hands. The building security might not question a pregnant woman." After a moment's hesitation, Dominic nodded. "Fine, but you stay behind me at all times." They entered the building lobby posing as a family visiting a lawyer, Dominic in a suit, Lena visibly pregnant, Marco playing the role of concerned brother. The security guard barely glanced at them, waving them through to the elevators. The 15th floor was quiet, most offices closed for lunch. Marco led them to a door at the end of the hall, unmarked and locked with a biometric scanner. He produced a cooler from his bag. Lena tried not to think about what was inside, and extracted what they needed. The scanner accepted Anton's fingerprint, then his retinal scan. The door clicked open. Inside was a small room dominated by server equipment, monitors, and enough technology to run a small intelligence operation. A timer on the largest screen showed 47 minutes remaining. "Can you stop it?" Dominic asked. Marco was already at the keyboard, his fingers flying. "Working on it." Anton encrypted everything, set up multiple fail-safes. "I need time." Time they didn't have. Lena watched the timer count down while Marco worked, her heart hammering. 40 minutes. 35. 30. Each number felt like a door closing, a future slipping away. "I'm in," Marco announced. "But there's another problem. The system requires a password to abort the upload, something personal to Anton." "Try the obvious ones," Dominic ordered. His birthday, his mother's name, his home address. Marco tried them all. None worked. 20 minutes left. "What about his daughter?" Lena suggested. Everyone turned to look at her. Powerful men always have blind spots. Family is usually it. "He didn't have children," Marco said. "Are you sure? Check deeper. Illegitimate kids, secret families, anything." Lena moved closer to the screen. "Men like Anton don't do anything without reason. If he was this paranoid about fail-safes, he'd make the password something only he would know." Marco dug through files while the timer ticked down. 15 minutes. 10. Lena's hands were shaking, her breath coming short. They were going to fail. The recordings would release, Dominic would be arrested, everything would fall apart. "Got it," Marco said. "Katerina, daughter from a relationship 20 years ago, raised in Russia, completely off the books." He entered the name. The screen flickered. The timer stopped at 7 minutes, 32 seconds. Upload aborted. Lena's knees went weak with relief. Dominic caught her, his arm around her waist. "You did it." "We did it," she corrected. Marco was already wiping the servers, ensuring no trace of the recordings remained. "This is all of it. Anton's entire insurance policy gone. No more surprises." "You're sure?" Dominic asked. "Positive. I'm destroying the hardware too, just to be safe." Marco pulled a hammer from his bag. "Give me 5 minutes." They watched him systematically demolish the servers, reducing Anton's last revenge to sparking components and shattered hard drives. When he finished, nothing remained but electronic debris. "It's done," Marco said. "Really, truly done. Anton's gone, his organization is scattered, and his evidence is destroyed. You're free, boss." Free. The word felt foreign. Dominic Moretti. Free from the weight of his criminal empire, from the constant threat of exposure, from the endless cycle of violence and retaliation. "Let's go home," Lena said softly. Home. Not the penthouse, not the warehouse, but the house with the yellow nursery and the gardens and the promise of something better. They left the building without incident. 3 people who just prevented a disaster no one would ever know about. In the car, Lena felt the tension draining from her body, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "You were right," Dominic said quietly, "about facing things together. I'm sorry I tried to protect you from it. You were trying to keep me safe. I understand that." Lena took his hand. "But I'm stronger than you think. Stronger than I thought, honestly." "I know." He kissed her knuckles. "You escaped a penthouse under siege, survived in a safe house, and just helped stop a federal investigation. You're the strongest person I know." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. For so long she'd felt weak, helpless, blown around by forces beyond her control. But maybe Dominic was right. Maybe survival in impossible circumstances was its own kind of strength. They returned to the house as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sarah had arranged for their belongings to be moved from the warehouse, the few things Lena had accumulated during her months of running and the personal items Dominic had salvaged from the penthouse. "I'll leave you to settle in," Sarah said. "Security team is positioned but staying invisible. You'll have privacy but protection." After she left, Lena and Dominic stood in their new home, surrounded by boxes and possibilities. Tomorrow they'd unpack, arrange furniture, start building the routines of normal life. But tonight, they just needed to breathe. "We made it," Lena said, the realization still feeling surreal. "We made it," Dominic agreed. "Against every odd, despite every obstacle, we made it." Lena touched her stomach, feeling the baby move beneath her palm. Their daughter, who would grow up in this house, who would never know the fear and violence that had brought them here. That child was the future they'd been fighting for. "I love you," she told Dominic. "I love you too." He pulled her close. "Both of you." They stood there as darkness fell, 2 people who'd survived the worst and chosen each other anyway. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be adjustments, challenges, moments when the past tried to claw its way back. But they'd face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. 3 weeks later, Lena stood in the nursery folding tiny clothes while rain pattered against the windows. The rhythm was soothing, meditative, a far cry from the chaos that had defined her life just a month ago. She'd spent the morning organizing onesies by size, arranging stuffed animals in the crib, nesting in the way every pregnancy book said she would. It felt absurdly normal. "You're supposed to be resting," Dominic said from the doorway, his arms crossed, but his expression soft. "I'm 7 months pregnant, not dying." Lena held up an impossibly small sleeper. "Besides, this is resting. No one's shooting at me." Low bar. He moved into the room, taking the sleeper from her hands and guiding her to the rocking chair. "But point taken. Sit anyway. Doctor's orders." Dr. Chen had been insistent during yesterday's checkup. Lena's blood pressure was still elevated, her stress levels concerning despite the peaceful surroundings. Rest was non-negotiable. So was staying calm, which was easier said than done when your entire life had been upended. Dominic knelt in front of her, his hands on her knees. "Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours?" "I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. The admission came easier than it should have. Everything's been quiet. Too quiet. No threats, no attacks, no unexpected problems. It feels wrong." "It feels peaceful," Dominic corrected. "That's what normal life is supposed to feel like." I don't know how to do normal." Lena's voice cracked slightly. "For months I survived on adrenaline and fear. Now there's nothing to run from, nothing to fight, and I don't know what to do with myself." "You learn." His thumbs traced circles on her knees. "We both do. That's what these next few months are for, figuring out who we are when we're not in crisis mode." It sounded reasonable. It even sounded possible, But Lena had spent so long braced for disaster that she didn't know how to relax into safety. The baby kicked hard, a sharp jab against Lena's ribs. She winced, her hand going to the spot. Dominic's hand joined hers immediately, his expression transforming into wonder every time he felt movement. "Strong," he said. "Takes after her father." Lena managed a smile. "Stubborn and dramatic. I prefer determined and commanding." "Same thing, different PR." They sat in comfortable silence, the rain providing white noise, the nursery a cocoon of safety. These were the moments Lena was learning to treasure, the quiet ones, the ordinary ones, the ones that proved they'd actually survived. Marco appeared in the hallway, his expression apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, boss, but we have a situation." Lena's entire body went rigid. Dominic stood slowly, his hand squeezing hers once before releasing. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where someone from your old life wants a meeting, says it's urgent, says it affects your family." Marco's voice was carefully neutral. "Victor Castellano." The name meant nothing to Lena, but Dominic's expression went cold. "Victor's been out of the country for 2 years. What does he want?" "To talk. He's waiting at the property gate with 2 men, no weapons, completely exposed. Says he's not here to cause trouble." "They all say that." Dominic's jaw clenched. "Tell him to leave." "He says it's about a debt, one you'll want to settle." Marco hesitated. "He mentioned your father's name." Something flickered across Dominic's face. Pain, anger, old wounds reopening. "My father's been dead for 15 years. "I know, which is why I think you should hear him out." Marco glanced at Lena. "But the decision is yours." Dominic looked torn, his protective instincts warring with curiosity. Finally, he turned to Lena. "I need to handle this. Stay in the house with Sarah. If anything feels wrong—" "I'm coming with you," Lena said. "Absolutely not." "You promised. No more shutting me out, no more protecting me from your world." She struggled to stand, her belly making quick movements awkward. "If this affects our family, I have a right to be there." "Lena, I spent months hiding and running. I'm done with that." She met his eyes. "You want me to trust that we're safe? Then trust me to handle whatever this is." The standoff lasted maybe 5 seconds before Dominic relented. "Fine, but you stay behind me, and at the first sign of trouble, you run. Agreed?" "Agreed." They walked to the front gate together, Sarah flanking Lena while Marco stayed at Dominic's side. The rain had lightened to a drizzle, the afternoon gray and moody. 3 men stood outside the iron gates, exactly as Marco had described. Exposed, unarmed, visibly unthreatening. The one in front was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd once held significant power. His eyes went to Dominic with something that looked like relief. "Dominic Moretti," he said. "You've grown into your father's shadow." "Victor Castellano." Dominic's voice was ice. "You have 2 minutes to explain why I shouldn't have you shot for trespassing." "Because I'm here to settle a debt your father never collected." Victor gestured to one of his men, who held up a briefcase. 20 years ago, your father saved my life. Took a bullet meant for me during a territory dispute. I owed him everything. My life, my business, my family's future." My father never mentioned it. "He was a proud man. He said the debt was mine to remember, his to forget." Victor's expression was solemn. "But I never forgot. And when I heard you'd left the life, that you were trying to build something clean for your family, I knew how to repay him. I don't want your money." "It's not money." Victor nodded to his man, who approached the gate slowly and set the briefcase down before backing away. "It's information. Names, locations, evidence of every remaining threat to your transition out. People who might see your exit as weakness, who might try to exploit it." Dominic didn't move to retrieve the briefcase. "Why would you give me this?" "Because your father believed in honor, in debts paid and loyalty rewarded." Victor's voice was sincere. "I heard what you did to Anton Volkov. I heard how you protected your woman, how you're walking away on your terms. Your father would have been proud." The mention of his father clearly affected Dominic. Lena could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the slight softening of his expression. "You didn't have to come all this way for this." "Yes, I did. A debt 20 years old doesn't get settled with a phone call." Victor stepped back. That briefcase contains everything you need to close the last loose ends. After that, my debt is paid, and you're free. Truly free. Marco retrieved the briefcase, checking it carefully before bringing it to Dominic. Inside were files, photographs, documents, exactly what Victor had promised. There's one more thing, Victor added. A warning, if you'll take it. Carlo Russo is making moves, buying up territories you sold off. He's ambitious and young, doesn't remember the old rules about respecting men who've earned their exit. Is he a threat? Dominic asked. Not yet, but he could be. Victor met Dominic's eyes. Handle it now, before your child is born, before you have more to lose. The advice was sound, coming from a place of hard-earned experience. Dominic studied Victor for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you. For the information in the warning. No thanks necessary. I'm just paying what I owe. Victor glanced at Lena, his expression gentling. Your father would have loved to meet her, to meet his grandchild. He always said family was the only thing worth fighting for. With that, Victor and his men left, disappearing down the long driveway and out of their lives. Lena watched them go, her hand on her stomach, feeling the weight of history and obligation that had just been delivered to their doorstep. Who was your father? She asked quietly. Dominic was staring at the briefcase like it contained ghosts. A man who built an empire and lost himself in it. He died when I was 20, killed by someone he trusted. His voice was distant. I swore I'd be smarter, stronger, more careful, but I ended up walking the same path anyway. Until now. Until now. He looked at her, and Lena saw the determination in his eyes. Victor's right. I need to handle Carlo before the baby comes. One last loose end. How? Not with violence, with business. Dominic opened the briefcase, scanning the contents. Carlo wants territories and respect. I'll give him both, but on terms that ensure he never looks at my family as targets. Over the next week, Lena watched Dominic transform into someone she'd never seen before, a businessman rather than a crime lord. He made calls, arranged meetings, negotiated deals with the precision of a corporate executive. The violence that had defined his world was replaced by contracts and handshakes. Carlo Russo turned out to be exactly what Victor had warned, young, ambitious, hungry for power. But he was also smart enough to recognize a good deal when he saw one. Dominic offered him a partnership. The remaining territories would go to Carlo, but under the umbrella of Dominic's legitimate security consulting firm. Carlo would handle operations while Dominic provided legal protection, political connections, and the kind of respectability that money alone couldn't buy. You're giving me everything I wanted, Carlo said during their final meeting, which took place in Dominic's home office with Lena listening from the hallway. Why? Because I'm getting what I want, a clean exit and insurance that my family stays untouchable. Dominic's voice was firm. You make money, you build your empire, and in return my wife and child are permanently off limits. To you, to your people, to anyone who might see them as leverage. And if I agree, then you get my blessing, my connections, and my guarantee that no one interferes with your rise. But if you or anyone connected to you ever threatens my family, I will come out of retirement long enough to end you and everything you've built. The threat was delivered calmly, almost casually, but Lena heard the steel beneath it. This was the line Dominic would never let anyone cross. Deal, Carlo said. They signed papers, shook hands, and just like that, the last threat was neutralized. Lena emerged from her hiding spot as Carlo left, finding Dominic at his desk looking exhausted but satisfied. Is it really over? She asked. It's really over. He pulled her onto his lap carefully, mindful of her belly. No more enemies, no more threats, no more looking over our shoulders. We're free, Lena, completely free. She wanted to believe him, and for the first time she actually did. The days that followed were a revelation. Dominic threw himself into legitimate business with the same intensity he'd once applied to criminal enterprise. The security consulting firm flourished, the real estate investments paid off, and within a month they were making more money legally than they ever had through illegal means. Turns out crime doesn't actually pay that well when you account for overhead, Dominic joked one evening, reviewing financial statements. Who knew? Lena had started to relax too, allowing herself to enjoy the pregnancy without constant fear. She and Dominic attended birthing classes together, painted the nursery together, argued over baby names together. It was domestic and sweet, and everything she'd thought impossible. But the real test came 5 weeks later, when Lena went into labor. It started at 3 in the morning, a tightening across her abdomen that she initially dismissed as more false contractions. But these didn't fade. They grew stronger, closer together, unmistakably real. Dominic, she shook his shoulder. It's time. He was awake instantly, moving with controlled urgency. Are you sure? Very sure. Another contraction hit, stealing her breath. We need to go. Now. The drive to the hospital was a blur of pain and breathing exercises, and Dominic's voice talking her through each contraction. Dr. Chen met them in the delivery room, calm and competent, her presence reassuring. You're doing great, she said after examining Lena. 7 centimeters dilated. It won't be long now. Long turned out to be relative. 5 hours of labor that felt like days. Dominic holding her hand through every contraction, every scream, every moment Lena was convinced she couldn't do this. Yes, you can, he kept saying. You're the strongest person I know. You survived everything to get here. You can do this. And she did. At 11:47 a.m., Sophia Marie Moretti came into the world screaming her indignation at being disturbed. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a shock of dark hair and her father's eyes. Dr. Chen placed the baby on Lena's chest, and time seemed to stop. This tiny, perfect person, the reason for everything, the future they'd fought so hard to build, was finally here. She's beautiful, Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Dominic was crying too, not bothering to hide it. She's perfect. You're both perfect. He cut the cord with shaking hands, his expression a mixture of awe and terror and overwhelming love. When the nurses took Sophia to clean her up, Dominic kissed Lena with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Thank you, he said. For her, for this, for giving me a reason to become someone better. We both became better, Lena corrected. That's what love does. They brought Sophia back wrapped in a pink blanket, placing her in Lena's arms. The baby had stopped crying, her eyes trying to focus on her mother's face. Lena traced a finger down the impossibly soft cheek, marveling at the perfection of tiny fingers, tiny toes, tiny everything. Hello, Sophia, she whispered. We've been waiting for you. Dominic sat beside them on the hospital bed, his arm around Lena, his hand resting on Sophia's head. She's so small. She'll grow. Lena looked up at him. We'll teach her to be strong, to be kind, to be everything we wish we'd been. She'll be better than us, Dominic said with certainty. She'll never know the darkness we came from, only the light we built for her. It was a promise and a prayer and a hope all rolled into one. Sophia would grow up in safety, surrounded by love, never knowing how close she'd come to being born into violence and fear. The hospital room filled with visitors over the next few hours. Marco arrived with flowers and an expression of stunned amazement at the tiny person who'd turned his boss into a sentimental mess. Sarah brought gifts and practical advice about sleepless nights. Even Dr. Chen stopped by off-duty to check on her favorite patient. She's healthy, you're recovering well, and your blood pressure is finally normal, Dr. Chen said with satisfaction. I'd say you're going to be just fine. That night, after the visitors left and Sophia was sleeping in her bassinet, Lena and Dominic sat in the quiet hospital room and talked about the future. I want to start a foundation, Dominic said, using some of the money from the legitimate businesses, something that helps women in situations like yours, pregnant, alone, desperate. Lena's breath caught. Really? You said you wanted to make something good come from all this. That seems like a way to do it. He looked at their sleeping daughter. No one should have to choose between safety and survival the way you did. If we can help even a few people avoid that, it's worth it. The Sophia Foundation, Lena suggested, named after the reason we both changed. Perfect. Dominic kissed her forehead. We'll launch it next year once we're settled into being parents. The conversation drifted to smaller things, nursery decorating, sleep schedules, the logistics of life with a newborn. Ordinary concerns for ordinary people living an ordinary life. It was everything Lena had wanted and nothing she'd expected to actually achieve. They brought Sophia home 3 days later to a house that had been baby-proofed within an inch of its life. The nursery was ready, the security was invisible but thorough, and the future stretched before them full of possibility. The first few weeks were chaos. Sleepless nights, constant feedings. The learning curve of new parents who had no idea what they were doing. But they figured it out together, taking turns with midnight diaper changes, supporting each other through exhaustion, falling more in love with their daughter every day. Sophia was a month old when Dominic made his final break with the past. He called a meeting with every major player in his former world, arranged neutral ground, and made his position clear. "I'm out," he told them, permanently. "My territories are distributed, my operations are closed, and my family is off limits. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with Carlo Russo, who now controls everything I left behind." The room was silent. Then, one by one, the men nodded their acceptance. Dominic Moretti had earned his exit. No one was foolish enough to challenge it. He came home that night lighter somehow, as if a weight he'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. Lena was in the nursery, rocking a fussy Sophia, when he appeared in the doorway. "It's done," he said simply. "All of it?" "All of it. No more ties, no more obligations, no more past coming back to haunt us." He crossed to them, pressing a kiss to Sophia's head. "We're free to just be a family now." Sophia chose that moment to let out a massive burp, making them both laugh. The sound was light, genuine, untainted by fear or darkness. It was the sound of people who'd survived the impossible and come out the other side. 6 months passed in a blur of milestones. Sophia's first smile, her first laugh, the way she lit up when Dominic walked into a room. The Sophia Foundation launched to widespread acclaim, helping dozens of pregnant women escape dangerous situations. Dominic's legitimate businesses continued to grow, providing more than enough income to live comfortably, and Lena finally stopped looking over her shoulder. It happened gradually, so slowly she didn't notice until one day she realized she'd stopped flinching at unexpected sounds, stopped planning escape routes everywhere she went, stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. "You look different," Dominic observed one morning, watching her play with Sophia on the living room floor. "Different how?" "Happy. Settled. Like you finally believe we're safe." Lena considered this, then nodded. "I think I do. For the first time since I met you, I actually believe we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay." He joined them on the floor, Sophia immediately reaching for him. "We're going to be extraordinary." And they were. Sophia's first birthday came with a small party, just close friends, no business associates, no remnants of Dominic's old life. Just people who cared about them as a family, celebrating a little girl who represented everything good they'd managed to build from the ashes of their past. Lena stood in their backyard, watching Dominic chase a giggling Sophia across the lawn, and felt peace settle into her bones. This was the life she dreamed of during those lonely months in the diner. This safety, this love, this family. "You did good," Sarah said, appearing beside her with a knowing smile. "Both of you." "We survived," Lena corrected. "You did more than survive. You transformed." Sarah gestured to Dominic and Sophia. 6 months ago, who would have believed that man could be this happy doing something as simple as playing with his daughter? Lena smiled. "He's a good father. He's a man in love. That makes all the difference." That night, after Sophia was asleep and the house was quiet, Lena and Dominic sat on their back porch watching the stars. It had become their ritual, these quiet moments at the end of chaotic days, reconnecting and remembering why they'd fought so hard to get here. "Do you ever regret it?" Lena asked. "Giving up the power, the empire, all of it?" "Not even for a second." Dominic pulled her close. "I thought that's who I was, the power, the control, the empire. But I was wrong. I'm who I am right now, in this moment, with you and Sophia. Everything else was just noise." Even the violence?" "Especially the violence." He was quiet for a moment. "I won't pretend I'm a different person. I'm still capable of terrible things if someone threatens my family. But I'm choosing not to live in that space anymore, choosing to build instead of destroy." "I'm proud of you," Lena said softly, "for making that choice every day." "I'm proud of us," he kissed her temple, "for surviving, for fighting, for refusing to let the darkness win." They sat in comfortable silence, the night wrapping around them like a blanket. Somewhere inside, Sophia slept peacefully, completely unaware of the war that had been fought to give her this safe, stable world. And that was exactly how it should be. Years from now, Sophia would grow up knowing her parents loved her fiercely. She'd know her father had been successful in business, that her mother had run a foundation helping vulnerable women. She'd know safety and security and the kind of love that moved mountains. She wouldn't know about the diner where her mother collapsed. Wouldn't know about the mobster who'd nearly destroyed their family. Wouldn't know about the violence and fear and desperate choices that had brought them all to this moment. That history would stay buried, a foundation for the future, but not its definition. "I love you," Lena said, the words carrying the weight of everything they'd survived. "I love you too," Dominic replied. "Both of you. More than anything in this world." They stayed there until the stars began to fade, two people who'd walked through fire and emerged holding each other. The journey had been brutal, the cost high, the path uncertain. But they'd made it. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Inside, Sophia stirred in her crib, making the small sounds that meant she'd be awake soon. Lena and Dominic rose together, moving to care for their daughter, to embrace the beautiful chaos of parenthood. The past was behind them. The future stretched ahead, full of ordinary moments and extraordinary love. They'd survived the darkness and built something worth protecting, something worth celebrating. A family. A life. A love that had conquered everything thrown at it. And they were just getting started.